Welcome to the Joe Pavich podcast. This show is all about what got people where they are today. Work-life mix, struggles, the grind, the process, and the message. Welcome to the Joe Show. Today I'd like to introduce my guest, Steve Martin. Steve is a founder of Martin Law Firm. Steven is a trial attorney. The firm specializes in divorce, bankruptcy, estate planning, probate, family law, estate planning, personal injury, civil. I mean, the list goes on and on, Steve. You have 187 attorneys working for you. This list is insane.
Well, six of us.
Nice.
But, we feel like it's 187 of us.
Love it.
And that list is a lot more comprehensive than I thought. But what we don't do is we don't do criminal defense work.
Yeah.
So I guess we don't do everything.
Well, tell you what, man, great to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks
Long
for having
time no
me.
see. So what's happening these days in the world of Steve?
What's happening these days is I have another teenager graduating high school. So I guess I'm doing something right because, as you know, our kids are getting older and older and older. And I'm really proud of them.
That's great. You have four, right?
4 daughters. Can you imagine?
So 4 plus Eviana. I mean, that's
and a mother-in-law.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nice. Do you have the cabana for the mother-in-law?
No, she's got her own place that she lives at. So yeah, they're not all under one roof, but sometimes it's a little hairy.
5 against 1.
I also have a father-in-law.
Yeah.
So 5 against 1.
Yeah. So I have Juliana. She's my girl. So I got the 2 girls, my wife and my daughter. So the 2 of them can overpower the 3 of us.
So how do you let that happen?
It just goes that way.
I'm going to give you some notes on how to stand strong. Make sure that there's some authority.
That's actually, I like to hear about this because 4 against 1, man. That's.
I would like to think it's 1 against 4. And it's well balanced.
Love it.
We gotta set a good example for these kids too to make sure that when they get older and they find their husband, it's a solid man.
I always think of the Meet the Parents, the old movie with Robert De Niro,
right?
And the daughter, right? So when a guy comes in, Ben Stiller, he's difficult, right?
I can't imagine what it's going to be like for my kids when they bring their boyfriends home and they've got to endure the wife. I feel like I'm kind of chill, but then they're going to have Eviana, which is she's going to be rough.
That's right. Love it. Well, you got to be that way too.
I think so.
So. My oldest is a freshman, so he's got this girlfriend, sweetheart, right? But those days are coming. Like the other day, for example, I had this whole night planned. Everybody's out of town. I'm thinking movie night, me and him. I'll pick him up from school, surprise him.
What are you going to watch?
I forget what it was, Transformers or something like that.
Have you watched those?
I have. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
Nah.
I haven't even watched all the Marvel movies.
Well, especially when you get in some of the theaters with some of these IMAX. I mean, it's a lot. So he comes home from school and he says to me, "So Dad, can you drop me off at my girlfriend's house? We're going to go out to dinner and a movie." And I thought, here it is. I think it's going to be me and you, and now I got to share my time.
You've been replaced.
I don't want to share my time, man.
Girlfriends are a little bit more fun than Dad.
Yeah. But I want to make them happy. So I know that makes them happy. So I just got to sit back, man.
All right. So freshman in high school, what's the go-to place for his age group to go?
Go-to spot is probably like Hollywood Theaters in Naples. They like going there.
Okay.
Also, Dave and Buster's.
Right.
What's the other place in Naples?
They've got
they got
Alamo?
the bowling and the video games and all that. What's that place called?
I don't know. But are kids allowed to go to the Alamo Draft House?
Yeah, actually they are.
Okay. You're going to have a real problem if he's going to say, Dad, I need you to drop me off at the Mercado with my girlfriend. Then it's like, we got a problem here,
I've done
kiddo.
that. I've had to do that. Yeah, Rocco's Tacos for dinner.
Yeah, I'm thinking I didn't mean Mercado. I'm thinking Waterside.
Oh yeah,
he's like,
okay.
Dad, take me to Waterside.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, really? Like, where do you want me to drop you off? Hermes. Make that work, Dad.
It's my girlfriend's birthday. I want to treat her to something.
Yeah, so she can learn how to get denied early.
We'll take you to Edison Mall or Coastland Mall.
Absolutely, they got to keep
give you $100 and you can kind of do your thing. But man, seriously, I appreciate you being here. I mean, being away, your wife's got you covered today. She's probably in trial, fighting right now.
No, I think we have a couple folks coming in for probate's one of those practices that it's probably not the most fun practice because you're dealing with people that have had a loss in their family. And so that's what she's working on right now is sadly somebody has passed. And so she has to give advice as to what to do in that situation because probate is the transfer of assets from the dead to the living.
Yeah.
and it's kind of a heavy practice.
Sure.
You can imagine.
It is, yeah, I would bet. And it's probably hard for you too, because I mean, I know how you are with people, and you probably take a little bit on yourself, right? When you're working with, because you feel so bad working with people that have lost their father or mom that maybe you knew.
I think you're right. It depends on the context. If I'm going to deal with somebody who, let's say, their father passed away at 95 years old with, 10 successful kids, grandkids, a great life, it's sad for the children, but then you think of the father, that's a hell of a good run.
Yeah, for sure.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's how I try to look at it. And if at all possible, make light of things whenever you can.
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, great job out there, man. I've for years and years, I've seen you out there. Even before I knew you, I saw all your billboards and your TV commercials and everything else. So hats off.
I'm
man.
glad somebody saw them.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because billboards, people ask me all the time because I have a couple.
Right.
Not as many as you.
Maybe not. I don't know.
But I got a couple.
Or are we counting?
No.
Okay.
No. I just know you got me. It's funny because people always ask me, do billboards work? And it's funny because they don't work at first. People drive by, they have no idea, right? It's almost like they have to drive by 20, 30, 40, 50, for it to like register that that's you. So people often ask me, do they work?
Well, what do you think?
I think they do.
Why?
Name recognition, just seeing your name. And I don't think that works by itself, but it's like the more they see you in other areas, they kind of relate to you being up there.
I feel that it's you're harmonizing all of your marketing efforts. Yep. And so any one on its own, sure, it may work, but if you add billboards with, we used to do a lot of television, so billboards with television. Yeah. The interesting thing about television is more people watch TV than you would expect.
Sure.
And, for us, it gives a degree of credibility because we've all been raised to see somebody on television as, oh, that's so-and-so.
That's right.
And you're buying a degree of credibility by being on television.
Yeah.
Now what's interesting is the way the market is shifting is I wonder, does television have that same weight? Or are people listening to podcasts? Are they watching things on video? I don't really watch much broadcast TV anymore. And I think we've drawn back our television advertising drastically because it's just, what for?
Yeah, same here. It's almost like the newspapers, right?
What's a newspaper?
I think that's that piece that gets thrown onto the front door.
Oh, right.
Black and white.
But that was something that was incredibly relevant when we were kids. Everybody read the news press. And now I get the Wall Street Journal on Saturday. That's it. Yeah. And even then, my children are like, why are you reading a broadsheet? That's so archaic.
It just looks so cool, though. When you sit back. I always thought it was cool when somebody was in the airplane, they had it folded a certain way.
Right. Make sure it was pressed so you don't get all the stuff on your hands.
That's right. Black coffee in their hand, right?
Absolutely. Now we're starting to sound like a bunch of old men.
The glasses kind of sitting down on the nose.
Yeah, well.
It's kind of cool.
I'm at that point now where I think I probably should get the glasses, but I need to get the glasses that I can take off quickly so my wife doesn't see me wearing them when I'm reading because,
You're at that age.
But I don't want her to think I'm at that age.
Yeah. Don't fight it. I went for an eye test about a month ago, and I'm thinking that he's going to tell me, you're like, it's amazing how good your eyes are. Like you're 1 in a million.
Right. What were your results?
Not good. Readers. I got readers.
I don't want to ask who your eye doctor is. Yeah. Hopefully it's somebody we know.
It's not. But if I need to go in that direction, right. I'll go to see him.
There you go.
Tyson.
Brother. That's my brother, yeah. So he runs Tyson Eye here in town. It's an ophthalmology practice with a number of offices all over the area. They do a great job.
Nice.
Luckily, I'm not at the age where I need to get my cataracts replaced.
Yeah. Well, he's quite the marketer as well. It must run in your family.
Well, billboards. And I believe they do television as well. And I think I heard a radio spot at some point too.
Nice.
But look, the marketing, it's all about telling the story of who you are and what you have to offer.
That's right.
So for example, with you, you're telling the story of, not only is there a personality of Joe, but there's also, the skill set of what you're bringing to the table. Yeah. And the fact, and I'm not going to toot your own horn, but the fact that you can market yourself shows that you can also market somebody's residence, which you're trying to sell. Yeah. So those skills kind of blend to each other.
They do.
So now I've got your sales pitch on how you're going to tell the wife.
I'm going to use that one, actually. It's pretty good.
But it's true. And that's the best marketing is Honest marketing.
Yeah. At first, when I was doing them, people would think because he's on billboards, he's probably more expensive, maybe he's not approachable. You kind of get that a little bit. And it's funny because the more social media that you do, my goal is to just say, hey, I'm just an average Joe. Call me. I'll work with you no matter what price point. People think I only specialized in.
Well, I've experienced this because I've sent clients to you and I say, Joe, look, this is, a Cape Coral house. It's not as expensive as your Naples ones. Are you okay with it? And Stephen, I'm going to be there in 5 minutes. I'm driving up there.
That's right.
Are you sure?
On my way.
I'm there. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
It's in Northwest Cape.
Yeah, I got it.
I'll be there in 20 minutes.
Yeah. I'll stop at your house on the way.
There you go. Yeah.
But it's funny, and we were talking about newspapers earlier, and it kind of made me think of an old story. So when I was a kid, I grew up in Chicago, right? Street after street, baseball field down the block. There was a rocket slide over here. We used to ride our bikes everywhere. So one winter, I said, I'm going to get a paper route. I was start making some money.
Okay.
I'm going to start, earning some money. So I think it lasted about a week. It was snowing outside. My father would go grab the box of papers out in front, the big bin they'd throw at our house.
Right.
And we had to roll them up and stuff them in bags. It's probably 10 degrees below zero. I'm thinking, like the game Paperboy.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to be on my bike with the bag. I'm going to be throwing papers, landing them on the front doorstep, and that's going to be it. My father rolled them all and delivered them all. I was in the car. I was probably 10 years old, sleeping.
Yeah, I can tell you why it lasted
like
a week.
Freezing in the car with the heat on, sleeping at 5 a.m. So I didn't do the greatest job.
So was that your first lesson, first great success, or first what?
I don't think it was anything. I think it was just a way that I realized that maybe that's not my thing. Paperboy game and reality is not the same.
It's still a game, though. Somebody delivers my paper.
It is.
Every Saturday, I wake up and there's the paper there. I don't think it's a paper boy. I think it's some guy that gets up and does a good hustle.
Yeah, that's right.
Every Saturday.
You don't see a lot of them, a lot of paper. My neighbors get papers across the street, and that's about it. I don't see too many on my block.
I like the paper because it's there, it's concrete. I'm sick of looking at screens all day long. It's a little bit where you could just take it outside on the patio, have a read, and calm down.
Yeah.
And Eviana, my wife, she likes the paper too because, again, she gets to turn down the tempo, slow down, and read.
Yeah, that's right. I try to do the whole phone thing.
What do you think? iPad?
Let's go YouTube.
Well, as an attorney, I try to have all of our legal research done by books, and the legal research subscription services try to push us towards doing everything electronically because they charge the same, but they don't have to print the books and deliver the books. But I think there's something about reading a legal text which you just slow down and you absorb it, and it's a little bit more meaningful versus reading another 10,000 words on a screen.
That's right.
Which it for me, it doesn't really, I guess, impact me as much as if I was reading it on paper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's hard to explain.
Plus, you're going to do it. That's the best way to do it, of course. Instead of the whole thing.
And you can highlight
it. Get your readers on.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing is I can't increase the font size. So not able to do that. Oh well.
Yeah. So what's it like, man? I mean, with kids, four girls.
Right.
Your wife is in the business. She's your partner.
She is.
Eviana. Like a day like, I mean, it's got to be, insane. What intrigued me about your story really the most is that you're a busy guy, right? Married, happily, girls, work. You guys are successful. You got kids. What's it like?
It's all I know. So I could just describe to you how a day works, and then you can maybe tell me if that's a good day or if that's insane.
Let's hear it.
We get up, Eviana and I both get up at 5 o'clock every morning, and we go to the gym. We do CrossFit, which is a mix. It's hard to describe, but it's a mix of Olympic weightlifting with cardio, with all types of hard exercise. A buddy of mine owns the gym, so we go there, and it's fantastic. And we started doing this, Joe, I think probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I think it's revolutionized our physical fitness. Now, I mean, you've seen Eviana. She's reasonably fit. Yeah. And you haven't complained that I'm in bad shape.
You look in good shape right now, man. But that might be the 3 shirts you have on, though.
It could be the 3 shirts. Well, it was cold in here when I came in. But doing that, the physical fitness, I think, has made it so we could do so much more in our life. And so we start our day going to the gym, then come back, maybe take a kid to school, blah, blah, blah. And then we just start working right away.
Yeah.
And, similar to your job, our job is about helping people. And it actually is kind of a rewarding thing to do. I have people that come to me that, for example, let's talk about somebody that has a bankruptcy problem, which we're getting more and more of. If you've ever endured or suffered the stress of having too much debt, my clients that come in are in various states of distress, stress, panic. You really realize how serious this is when you have a cop leaving the bathroom in your office because he just threw up because he's so freaked out about all of his debt. And what's nice about our bankruptcy practice is, even though it's not the most lucrative thing that we do, I feel it's the most helpful thing we do. Because for, a couple $1,000, we're able to run you through the bankruptcy process, and all of that oppressive debt that you've had to deal with, it just goes away.
Yeah.
And to be able to tell somebody who's basically got the jitters and is about to be in tears in front of their wife,
Sure.
I can say, hey, man, you don't have to worry about this. And I walk them through the process, and they fully comprehend that they don't have to deal with all this crap. It's awesome, because that person's going to go home and sleep at night.
Oh, that's right.
And
you could probably see the weight that you just pulled
It's
up.
awesome. That's the best thing.
Yeah.
The other practices we do, divorce and family law, nobody's really happy at the end of a divorce.
Sure.
At best, you have somebody that kind of only has a little bit of dog crap on their shoes.
Yeah.
But nobody's happy through a divorce.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy, they
are. Yeah. I never thought of it that way, because you do so many different things, but that's probably one of the more rewarding things that you can do.
Yeah, and the knock on it is it's not the most lucrative.
Yeah, of course.
But we're surviving. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it's like, for me in business, I have to do so many different things, right?
Sure.
So a lot of times we get clients with. By the way, I'm in real estate. Did you know that, Steve?
Yeah, I did.
Like when you get people probate. They're fighting. And you need to get like a good, mediator in there to make everybody happy.
Right.
I can help with that.
Well, and you probably noticed sometimes we'll send you a probate case where somebody has a house and everybody hates each other, and so we need a diplomat to keep the family from being at their throats, because if they're fighting, it hurts them.
So I'm your guy. And
I would say so.
The bankruptcies, in those situations, but it's interesting because, for us, we do so many different things. Like I have clients that have homes that are, maybe it's a hoarder type of house, right? Where we have to go in and we got to do so much before we sell it, but we don't charge for that.
Right.
I use a company, they come in, they unload stuff. We get the cleaners, we get the grout clean, we get the walls touch up. And people always ask me, Joe, is that going to cost me?
Right.
And I say, well, you got to pay them whatever they charge, but we're not going to charge you extra to
Well, the
kind of manage it.
coordination part of it. And look, you've got the network of people where you know what you have to do. I mean, we've had situations where somebody's passed in a house and they'd been there for a bit.
Yeah.
If you think about it, well, what do? You
Right.
You and I know how to handle that, but a lot of other people may not know right away. And, these are real world problems that actually happen.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening.
I know. And then the more you do to help those people, like even like rentals and stuff, people say, Joe, I'm looking for a rental.
Yeah.
And I may not work with that person. I have a team of girls that work with me that I could say, hey, work with Andrea, work with Cindy, you're going to like them more than you like me.
Right.
Because they're so awesome. You got to have good help, great help.
And a good network of people that you trust.
Yeah.
Because whenever you make that referral, well, it's important.
Yeah.
And, it's tricky for us. My approach to divorce is kind of different than a lot of people. So when people refer divorce cases to me, sometimes folks will come back and be like, this guy really tried to talk me out of a divorce.
Yeah.
Well, what's up with that? But, I believe in that approach.
Yeah, that's right.
So
you got to do all those things. You have to, like for me, I have to market myself, right, to get the phone to ring.
Right.
And then I got to market my properties to get the phone to ring on those properties. And then when the market goes up and down, like it's down right now, the real estate market, you still have to, you can't stop. You got to do things like, well, I don't know, like this.
But I feel like this is fun for you.
It is.
And for us, everything we do, and going back to your original question of, what's a day in your life like? For me, and I believe for Eviana, every day for us, we're playing.
Yeah.
we get to help people on a daily basis. We go to work. It's not really work. It's everybody at our office. It's a good, solid team. We enjoy each other. Getting the opportunity to do marketing, say marketing like this, it's fun.
Yeah, it is.
We're going to start doing more online content, educational content to try to explain people the legal system because, before I went to law school, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then, through the training that you receive at law school, you kind of get exposed to, how the inner workings of the world operates.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm losing the correct word. But I want to make sure that I can educate people as much as possible of how the legal system works. Our legal system, in my mind, is the best one in the world, but you have to understand how it operates so you could be a good participant in it. So that's what we're going to try to do.
I like that.
Is educate people.
Well, because you walk into a law firm, right? They always have the books. Do you have the books on the wall?
No, well, I do have the books because remember I like the books, but they're in our library and more law firms don't have libraries. We were paperless from 2006.
Wow.
So we've never had the files or anything else. Everything's been cloud-based so the wife and I could travel.
That's great. Could you imagine like doing this 50 years ago? You'd have a whole room full of documents, probably.
Absolutely. And books and books and books and dusty old books that you'd have to read.
Yeah.
Which I do think is cool.
So what's the timeline? Like say 50 years ago, somebody had a room full of books and papers and everything. How long do you have to keep those for before they're irrelevant?
Well, let's separate the question. If you're asking about the legal texts, the system is based on precedents and what the case law is.
Yeah.
And so the idea is if there is a case and you have a legal question, you say, Stephen, what happens in this situation? I have to think of that question. And one of the ways of figuring this out is you do legal research, which means you go look at the case law of what decisions have been made in the past.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, Joe, this is what's been done in the past based on this case and this case and this case. And then we bring those cases to your judge and say, Judge, well, look, the precedent is this is how this rule has been handled in the past, and this is how you have to apply this rule to Joe's situation. So that's why you keep the books for quite a long time.
Yeah.
For client papers, you keep it as long as it's relevant for that file.
Okay.
For example, I keep my clients' wills because it's harder for me to lose my clients' wills than it is for my clients, right? When you're dead, you're not going to call me and say, Steve, I need the will now. I keep the originals.
Important.
Right. And so I keep those indefinitely until I get notice that so-and-so has passed away.
And those are all now on a file. I mean,
they're actually... The wills and trusts are the only old-fashioned, like real paper, hard copy thing that I have. So we have a vault with all of our wills and trusts in it. But everything else, it's all on the cloud.
Man, that's great.
It's weird, right?
It's made it easy for sure.
100%.
Today with DocuSign and eSign Doc, it's just so easy.
And I think the best part of it is it's made legal services cheaper and more affordable for everybody.
Yeah.
I always say we're a blue-collar law firm. So we do consumer law for regular people. I don't do corporate. I don't do criminal law. Just regular folks. If you need a lawyer, we can probably try to help you.
Yeah. It's funny because you've grown so much since I've known you with what you guys do.
Well, I'm losing weight. Are you talking about the firm?
Your firm.
Yeah.
Your head.
Yeah, it could get bigger.
But it's funny because sometimes I'm looking, I'm like, all right, let me look at his website real quick to see if that's what he does, because I'm going to send people to you for something that I didn't know you did.
Right. Oh, so well, thank you.
Yeah.
What was the most recent thing that you learned that we didn't do? Medical malpractice?
That was it.
Medical malpractice is a really touchy thing because I know a lot of doctors, but I also know a lot of people make mistakes. And for physicians, there is a heightened responsibility to do the right thing. And we will sue physicians that have made a mistake, but you have to be very careful about that because those cases are so expensive to prosecute. You really need to make sure that there was a medical error and true negligence.
Yeah.
And so I decline, my accept rate for medical malpractice is very, very low.
Yeah.
Because it has to actually truly be medical negligence.
Sure.
And doctors will tell you there are bad results that are part of the process. Yeah. And, just because somebody's had a bad result doesn't mean it's the doctor's fault.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful about it.
Of course.
And also cognizant that that's somebody's reputation. And you don't just go sue people willy-nilly.
It's gotta be hard because when somebody comes in and say, "Hey, Steve, I got a case. This doctor," and you're in your mind, you're probably wondering, like, "I hope it's not my friend."
Well, I always ask. I always ask, who is the
before
physician?
you ask,
Yeah,
you're probably thinking, "Man, it's probably going to be one of my."
It hasn't happened yet.
That's good. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't. Right. When I look at kind of what you do, a lawyer, attorney, and I've always thought it's got to be so cool to be on trial, and that's like that's probably the scariest part, I would think, for anybody, is to be, in a court, fighting a case. I mean, what is that like?
I'll put it to you this way. What's your feelings about public speaking before you got proficient at public speaking? Now, take a step back. Not everybody, but most people are afraid of public speaking.
Yeah.
So here, trial is public speaking, where I have a trained attorney on the other side whose whole job is to say how wrong I am, where I have a judge in front of me who's going to evaluate what I just said in front of that attorney who said I'm full of it, in front of my client who's paying me to say the right thing. And so you better be right. So if you do it right, it's not a high wire act. It's actually, if you're properly prepared and you're correct. And so, like, for example, I don't go to court to lose. A lot of attorneys will go to court, their client paid them, they're going to make an argument.
Yeah.
I don't do that. My clients are going to win. So if we go to court, that means I've either evaluated that you're correct, or I don't really know, and I do need the judge to make a judgment.
Sure.
If you're wrong, let's say you're the bad guy, we're not going to court. My job is to protect you and not let you go to court and have an adverse ruling.
Yeah.
Because don't you think that's my job? I shouldn't let you just go to court and get your ass handed
That's
to
right.
you. My job is to be the gatekeeper to
I wanna
some
help
extent.
you.
So if you have that approach, then going to court isn't necessarily as much of a high wire act, although it still can be nerve wracking when you have the other attorney
Sure.
who's ready to, gut you. So, and look, I've been doing this for 18 years. I haven't been doing as many trials as I'd like to, just because of COVID and the nature of how things have shifted since COVID. But I still get nervous when I go to court.
Yeah.
And I think you're supposed to get nervous before
I
you
think
go
that's
to court.
pretty good, right? You get them nerves going, that nervous energy.
Oh yeah, like for me, like what do I do? I get asthma. So you ever get stress asthma?
Yeah.
You're one of those kids.
I wasn't, but I
know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And so for me, like if I don't get a little nervous, I check myself. I was like, do I even care enough to be here? And then you get a little nervous because you need that nervous energy.
Yeah, because their life is on the line for
Well, something's on the line. It's important enough to pay me my hourly rate to go there and deal with this person's problem and help them. And I do have to care about my client's problem. Otherwise, why am I there?
That's right. And it's kind of cool because in your career, like every time I go in to meet somebody, I still have that drive to get that listing, right?
Yes.
I hope I never get to a point where you just kind of go in. And I don't think I will. I think I'll always have that drive when I go in there to get the listing.
Well, and even if you don't, when you see your client, I read somewhere once before, this person said the best compliment somebody can ever give to you is them asking you for their help.
Yeah.
And if somebody does ask you for their help, you have to honor that and actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
So even if you do get burnout or tired when you sit down at the desk at the office, once you walk into the room and you see a human that's asking you for help, you'll take it seriously. And if you don't get that inspiration or care, then perhaps you're in a completely wrong profession.
That's right.
And so far, I haven't ever run into that issue where I've thought, oh gosh, I don't want to help this person who's asking me to help them.
That's great. Well, it should be that way.
Yeah.
It's funny because you mentioned public speaking. I mean, I kind of look back at like speaking, right? I always wanted to be good in front of people.
Right.
That was always kind of a goal. And I guess the podcast helps and things like that, right? But I look back in college and I had to give a speech in speech class. And I'll never forget, man. I tried everything I could do to get out of this speech. And I said, I'm not feeling well. Can I come to your office? I'll give you a speech. He says, Joe, you got to do the speech in front of the whole class.
Walk towards the things you're afraid of.
So I did. But I got to imagine in your career, not many people want to be a trial attorney, I would think.
I think you're right. I think there are a lot of attorneys that are better and more comfortable when I was growing up in the law practice, there was a differentiation between stand-up attorneys and sit-down attorneys. That's what they called them. And I don't know if it was a derisive comment or not, but I always thought my skill set was more of a stand-up attorney where I can go advocate for my clients in court. I don't like public speaking. It's certainly not something that I enjoy, but I do like going to court and explaining what's going on for my clients. And I have never been a detail-oriented enough person to be the sit-down attorney who's reviewing the 800-page contract to find the minutia that's incorrect. For me, my skill set has always been to receive a bunch of information and then synthesize that into a simple enough form that it can be verbally explained to a judge or a jury where they understand what my client's perspective is. And the sit-down lawyer is the one who will find that one little clause that then we can argue over. But for me, that's not my personality. I have too much ADHD.
Center of the room. Center of the room and work the room. Yeah,
well, and that's fun because, again, your job is to communicate. You have to express what you're telling a story. So you like telling stories. So you would actually, if you were an attorney, you would be a trial attorney, 100%. Because the part of the thing is you have 6 or 7 people on the jury there that don't necessarily want to be there, but you have the opportunity to tell the story of your client's life to them. Or if it's a bench trial, which means I have a judge there, the judge actually does want to be there and our judges care. So I get to explain my client's situation to a judge that is trained as an attorney and wants to be there, but I still get to tell a story.
It's great.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine how good you'd be because I think you would be great at that. I'm going to come sit in one day and just check it out.
Usually when we do trials, it's me and Eviana.
I'm going to sit back and check you guys out.
You'll see how it goes.
So what's it like preparing for a trial?
It's all about organization, which again is not something that I'm the best at. But if you think of it like telling a story, you've got to create your script. And you remember, I've got a background in Hollywood. So, when I was in Los Angeles, everything started with the script. We used to say, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. And that's important. And so when I do a trial, I have a script. I start with my outline of what I'm going to explain for my client. And once I have the outline, then you start breaking it down, just like with a screenplay. The screenplay, you always have your premise, you break it down into your acts, and then you have your scenes, and then finally you have what are the actors going to say. So for a trial, it's kind of the same thing. What am I going to explain happened to my client? Who's at fault? Is my client injured? How am I going to prove they're injured? And then it fills out from there.
Sure.
And ultimately, my trials are a script. I just read off a script or memorize it.
How about those little curveballs that get thrown? You have a script, right? You get your whole thing laid out and you get a curveball. You have to switch kind of mid.
Always.
Yeah.
But, the more preparation you have, the easier it is to deal with those curveballs. And the attorneys that I deal with on trials, they're throwing curveballs because they're trained professionals. And their job is to say that my story doesn't make sense. And they're supposed to throw and poke holes into it because the whole point of a trial is to find the truth. I'm telling you my client's perspective. I believe it's true, but the other side has their perspective and they disagree with mine. So they have to give their version of the truth. And the jury or the judge, they're the fact finder. Their job is to find out, well, of these stories, which one is the most true?
Yeah. Well, it's like a baseball analogy, right? You're waiting for the fastball.
Right.
But you're sitting back on the curveball.
Yeah. And,
just waiting for it.
And sometimes people are just throwing balls at the dirt.
Yeah.
It's tricky how it all works out. But
That's right.
Trials are a lot of fun. And I wish I could get more trials than I get these days. Because the problem is the way I believe the system has developed in the past couple of years is the insurance companies, if I have a good case or if I have a mediocre case where the facts are murky and we don't really know who's at fault or we don't really know how bad the damages are, from the insurance perspective, they're just gonna pay. Which I don't know if that's good or bad because I feel like a lot of attorneys are not getting the practice that they need to do the job properly.
Yeah.
And if I have a case where clearly the facts are not in my client's favor, I can't allow my client to go to trial and lose because that's doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
It's as corny as it sounds, it's all about the clients and not about my desire to go to trial.
Yeah. Well, it's about working with the people and figuring, like if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, Steve, here's my case, and you don't think you can beat that case.
Right.
You're probably sitting back and saying, hey, here's our chances of this happening.
I have to be honest and give my analysis.
It's got to be hard too, because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear what their home's really worth, Steve. In real estate, they don't want to hear what the truth is, but sometimes they got to hear it.
And my job isn't necessarily to persuade, but it is to be persuasive to make sure that somebody understands the truth.
Yeah.
And it's just my evaluation. And as my wife will tell you, I'm wrong a lot. So just because I say the case is no good doesn't mean that it's not any good. It's just I can't do it properly. And I've taken cases, or not taken, but I've had cases from other attorneys that, we figured out what truly happened. I had a medical malpractice case where a young boy was blinded by a physician and nobody could figure out what happened to him. And we did some research and figured out that this was a very bad doctor.
Yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah.
What was the first trial like?
Scary.
I could only imagine.
I don't think I can remember it with such specificity, because when you're under stress, you're not going to remember everything. But I do remember it was nerve-wracking. And I had my piece of paper, which I had read and memorized the night before, and just put it aside and just started talking from there.
Did you win?
I don't recall.
And how long ago was that?
It had to have been 18 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember if I won or lost.
It's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing, because I feel like in the earlier stage of people's career, they may have done things differently. I'm not saying better, but maybe they worked a little bit harder to kind of memorize everything, so they had everything right there, right? As time goes on, it's kind of in your head. You can move through it pretty quickly, right?
That's very true. Like right now, I believe if you gave me enough information for a trial, I could probably just go try it in a day.
Yeah.
Whereas before, that would have taken me weeks, if not months of preparation.
That's right.
And it's not because I'm smarter or better. It's just because I'm more experienced and I know what's necessary and what's important. What does the jury need to hear? What does the judge need to hear? And how to keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed with, oh my God, now I'm saying this. Now this is what I've noticed with younger attorneys, Joe, because I'm so old. But I have noticed this with newer attorneys. They don't know what they should or should not ask, say, in a deposition. So I had a case. A deposition is when an attorney asks you questions under oath, and you're supposed to answer them. So there was an attorney doing this deposition, really nice, sweet guy. And he took about 4 to 5 hours to ask my clients questions about what happened in their situation. If it were me, I would have gotten it done in 20 or 30 minutes. It wasn't necessary to go that long.
To spend that much time. Wear them down, get them frustrated.
Well, everybody always says, oh, I don't want the attorney to trip me up or anything like that. And I'm thinking, well, when I went to law school, I never took a how to trip people up class. It was just how to ask direct questions and how to figure out the answers to what you need to learn. And maybe I'm just not that talented that I haven't learned how to trip people up. But I did learn how to ask people questions and be able to, it's not an interrogation, but figure out what happened. You don't have to ask 10,000 questions to figure that out. And you certainly don't need to wear people down.
It's funny, as you're telling me that, I could see the look in your eyes. I feel like you'd be definitely someone to ask some good questions for sure. I could see the piercing look through your eyes.
Well, now we're on Zoom, so it's not really going to be that effective.
I love it. I should put maybe the interrogation.
Joe, where were you
light.
last night?
Put the interrogation light over the top of my head. As far as like reading people, I mean, is that something that is in you, or do you have to kind of learn how to read signs from people? Like if you know that the question you're answering, there's a little question mark there, to just keep tapping on it.
Yes. And I don't know if that's something that's learned or not, but I've probably have performed, I would say, a couple 5,000 or 10,000 client interviews where I have to sit down, establish a rapport with somebody in 15 minutes, explain them my services, and do it in a way that they're willing to put thousands of dollars on the table to hire me as an attorney. And what that teaches you very quickly is how to read somebody. Yeah. And so it's just, getting your reps in. And I think after you have enough reps in, then you're able to figure out where does this person fit within the pattern of other people that you've encountered. Yeah. And generally, you're right. And there are always the aberrations of people that don't fit that. And I'm sure it's the same thing with you. Yeah. If somebody's going to buy a house or if they just want to get some cookies at a showing.
For sure.
Right? And that's you can read those folks right away.
Of course.
So all of us work in sales.
You ever tell your wife, hey, Eviana, They're lying. I could just see it.
No, she tells me.
Does she really?
This is not a person we want to represent. Yeah, that's what she'll say.
Nice. I love it. Tell me about movies and TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always see the portrayal of the image of an attorney fighting out there, right?
Right.
What are some movies that may have gotten it right? Have any of them ever really gotten it right? Because they paint such a different picture of how cool it is to be up there, right?
Maybe so getting it right probably isn't as dramatic as getting it wrong.
Yeah.
There's no drama in that.
That's right.
If you're an attorney and you're doing your job correctly, there's no stress because you're adequately prepared. If you're an attorney and you're doing your job correctly, there's no drama because you're not cheating your clients. You're not screwing your clients literally too. So I think the movies that portray an attorney getting it right probably aren't ever being made because it's boring.
Yeah.
Now the attorney's getting it wrong. Sometimes that's interesting. Although I'll take it back. A Few Good Men actually is a great movie for me of trial prep because you get to see the whole team trying to figure out how to do this cross-examination of this colonel. I don't think we've ever had to put that much time into a cross-examination, and I don't think anybody ever really does put that much effort into it. Perhaps they do, and maybe I'm disclosing that I'm just not as prepared as I should be. But still, that's good drama.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
It's a great movie.
Although you asked earlier, my favorite lawyer movie is Devil's Advocate.
Is it?
Yeah.
Great
Great
flick. Great flick.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen, Edward Norton in Gear? Norton in Gear.
Primal Fear.
Primal Fear.
Yes.
Great movie. That's my favorite one.
And that was a movie where, you had Richard Gere being an arrogant attorney that, is, but not just an arrogant attorney, but an attorney that truly believed in his client.
He did.
And he misread that client because he thought he was truly working for the good guy because, funny enough, I believe most attorneys do want to be working for the good guy. And I have one of my partners critiques me all the time. He's like, Stephen, you internalize your clients too much and you believe your clients too much and you think all of your clients are the good guys. And he's like, it may not be correct. But that was Richard Gere's problem in that film was he truly believed that Ed Norton was not this crazy serial killer.
And at the end, the little twist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Cool movie.
Love that movie.
Yeah.
Stressful career?
I would say the business part of it's actually stressful. Here in Fort Myers, practicing law is actually a lot different than, say, practicing in Miami or Fort Lauderdale because for the most part, the attorneys here, the bar, it's a very collegial group of attorneys. And so what I mean by that is, we are all searching for the truth and we have rules that we need to play by, but nobody's flipping the bat on you or throwing balls at your head either. So, we do have a professionalism code that for the most part, people actually abide by. And that reduces stress and it makes it an easier thing to do. And it's also better for the clients because what I've observed is that when attorneys are unprofessional or causing stress to each other, the clients are the one that have to pay for that because we're billing for those fights and we're natural fighters. We fight people for a living. And so if I'm not only fighting my client's adversary, but also my client's attorney, well, then the legal bills rack up. Yeah. I see this a lot in divorce and family law.
Do you? Mm-hmm. What about somebody that wants to become an attorney? What advice would you give them?
Enjoy reading. There's a lot of reading. And there's a lot of reading. And I don't know if I mentioned, but Joe, there's a lot of reading. And it's important to be able to read efficiently and fast. And then also, I would think, try to be somebody that cares for other people. Mm-hmm. That's an essential part.
That's great advice.
And if you don't care for other people, you may not be the most successful attorney.
Yeah. Let's talk about divorce.
All right.
So what's the number one reason for divorce?
There are two reasons. It always comes down to money and sex. If there's not enough of either of them for that marriage, then you're going to get a divorce. And there are a lot of people that are together that are incompatible or people that aren't putting in the effort. For my wife and I, we've been married 19 years. We've been together close to 20. And she always says that she's still trying to date me, and I'm still trying to date her. But
That's
because
great.
we also see what happens when people get divorces. Yeah. And so this is when I counsel people that want to have a divorce I'm being as honest as I could be as I try to talk people out of it. And I always ask my clients or my potential client to envision, what is your life going to be like after your divorce? You have a 2-income family paying for one roof, and however many children that you have,
Yep.
you're going to get a divorce. So basically you just cut your income in half and doubled your expenses. So can you afford that? And is it worth it for whatever ego thing is flipping you off?
Sure.
Now, there truly are people that need a divorce. If there's domestic violence, time to go. That's kind of like one of the red lines that
no doubt.
that I have is if
This needs to happen.
yeah, you guys got to go because somebody can get injured, somebody can get killed. But if it's a fight over money, well, getting a divorce is like the opposite of what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
If it's a fight over sex, every couple has their own dynamic.
Sure.
But usually it's if the wife's not interested in the husband, and maybe the husband needs to go figure out how to make himself more interesting or more attractive to his wife. There are some wives that become unattractive to their husband, and that person needs to really look in the mirror and figure out, well, why is my husband not interested in me? And these are hard things to answer because it's deeply personal. But we're not trained to do that these days because I'm sure if you go online or watch any type of talk show, it's my husband is no good and all the girlfriends are saying that she needs to divorce him. Or conversely, all your boys are saying you got to. Actually, I don't see guys really getting talked into divorce by their buddies. But I do see, unfortunately, a lot of women talking other women into getting divorces.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, except it's just an observation. And maybe I just have a select group of people that, I'm getting a small piece of the market.
Sure.
But yeah, divorce, it's money and sex.
That makes sense. It's like, got to be like almost like a psychiatrist and an attorney at the same time. You could almost say to somebody, hey, watch these 3 episodes from the Jerry Springer show and it'll give you a good outline.
Look, a couple of the things that an attorney's supposed to do is one is be honest, which, we all aspire to do.
Yeah.
And let's see, what do we say? Honest, right, and also keep secrets. And so, and we do actually take that very seriously. I do keep people's secrets.
Yeah.
But having seen behind everybody's closed door in their marriage, I can say that your problem that you're dealing with in your marriage absolutely is probably insane.
Yeah.
And it may very well be unendurable, but it's not the craziest thing I've seen.
Yeah.
And it's not the weirdest thing I've heard of. And some of those people that have gone through, truly remarkable marital problems have been figured out how to be adults and save their marriage because it also
great.
involves children. Getting a divorce with children is catastrophic to the children.
It is. And sitting down with you talking through it, you talk people out of it. I've sent people to you.
Yeah.
And you've done a great job.
I mean, I'm not 100% persuasive. And some people, just because, I'm giving you perspective and context of why your situation is awful, but maybe it's not worthy of a divorce, it doesn't mean I'm right. And I don't know everything that's going on in your marriage.
Sure.
My business card says attorney and counselor. So I'm counseling. I'll give you some counseling and explain to you, well, here's the consequences of you doing this. And here's also some context so that the awful things your wife is doing, are awful. But is it going to be better with a divorce? And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
I've had friends that have gone through divorces after everything I've said, and their life is fantastic. So, sometimes you do need to get a divorce.
So one of the things you said was secrets, right? People give you the secrets.
Right.
So it's funny because with me, I try to get as much out of my head as I can, right?
Yeah.
Get as much out to have a clear mind
Sure.
to just do what I do every day, right? For you, you're kind of more like a sponge too, where people are dropping all their information on you.
Right.
Is there a way to just get that out of your system so you don't feel the weight of
I don't feel the weight of
secrets?
it because I've been doing it so long that I don't think anything. First of all, I don't do criminal defense. So my clients aren't doing criminal things.
Sure.
And
that's got to be hard with a lot of secrets in your brain.
Those people, they do a good job because you're defending the Constitution. And you do need to have good criminal defense attorneys.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of the most important legal practices that we have. But that being said, for me, the awful things I hear are, they're unfortunate and they're stressful, but it's never gotten to a level where I think, oh my gosh, this is just truly unbearable. It's usually, at best, Melrose Place or a good daytime soap opera.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that what my clients are going through it's not serious to them, because it absolutely is. But maybe I've just heard so much that it's not that I'm numb to it. I just understand that that's normal.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
A lot of this is just the things that may be shocking to you. I could just say, well, Joe, that's actually, that's normal. I can't say it was your next door neighbor that's doing these things, but it is truly normal. People do all types of interesting things to each other.
And hearing that from you, because you deal with so many people,
right?
Counselor, attorney. I mean, that probably does take some weight off of them, thinking that, hey, I'm not the only one that feels this way. This is kind of normal. Maybe we just need to deal with it.
Well, a woman has every right to want to murder her husband because he's, banging her best friend.
Yeah.
You have every right to be furious and want to kill him, and vice versa.
Sure.
For a husband whose wife is fooling around on him. But then you also have to be an adult and figure out how to deal with that.
Exactly.
And sometimes it truly is a divorce.
Sometimes in these economies, right, where things are a little bit slower, right, debt's gone up, interest rates have gone up, insurance, blah, blah, blah. The real estate markets, it's not exactly, skyrocketing by any means, but divorce, bankruptcy, I mean, is that busier for you right now during these weird times?
Well, divorce depends on if people can afford it.
Okay.
And I get that a lot of times, and I ask people, how are you going to afford to live on 2 incomes? But bankruptcy usually follows a divorce.
Yeah.
100%. And I see that often. And it's
you do both. Like if somebody comes into you and they want to get a divorce, you can do both.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can also counsel people too and say, well, look, we know how to do bankruptcy. Here's what's going to happen to you after this divorce.
Yeah. You ever had a case where, like, say, for example, you're going through divorce and halfway through they say, like, hey, honey, I love you. I don't know what we were thinking.
100%.
Just get back. And that's
those
probably
are the best.
You got to like that,
oh, yeah.
right?
Those are the best. And I have no judgment on it.
Yeah.
And because I truly have no judgment on it, because I've seen just all types of situations. I used to say I'd seen all types of crazy situations.
Yeah.
But now I've seen so much of these crazy situations that it's not crazy. It's actually normal.
Yeah.
I've had a couple that they went all the way through a divorce. And this one wasn't a money or sex problem. It was one of the spouses had a problem with drinking.
Okay.
And there wasn't a problem where the person was getting DUIs or anything else, but the other spouse had a problem with that.
Yeah.
And so they went through the whole procedure of getting a divorce. They truly loved each other. And then they got the divorce, and then they got remarried.
Yeah.
Finally, the spouse that was drinking too much is like, you know what? I probably should just stop drinking. Like,
maybe it's
you
me.
probably
Yeah.
should.
After I just spent all that money and
they got back
everything.
together again. And I've had a number of people that have gone all the way through a divorce, got a divorce, and then they got remarried.
Can you untangle everything?
Well, until the judgment's entered, you're not divorced. So and then with the financial part and everything else, you can put it all back together again. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's romantic,
It's probably a good feeling for you, though. Knowing
I think it's great.
I think you would be happier with that outcome than the other.
Yeah, I am. But then again, conversely, I also like it when somebody is in a truly miserable situation, if we can get them out of that.
That's
and
right.
Get them divorced, and then their life blossoms and turns around, because there are toxic relationships.
Of course.
Very much toxic relationships. Although my least favorite word right now is narcissist. Because I always think whenever somebody says, oh, my wife is a narcissist or my husband's a narcissist, I'm thinking, you probably watched some YouTube videos that are selling you something.
And I don't know what that really means.
No.
Yeah.
Because then I go interview the narcissist, or sometimes my client is a purported narcissist. And I'm like, no, my client just has inability to communicate.
Yeah.
That's probably more accurate.
That's the new word. I feel like that word is used. You hear it more now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and I know a lot of people use it, and they're nice, smart people, but I think it's just a crutch for a better analysis of what's going on.
And I'm sure that the people that are going through that with a narcissist it's got to be tough, because
it's very tough. So if you've called your spouse a narcissist, I'm saying your spouse may not be a narcissist, and I'm saying that there may be a deeper level of analysis that you have to apply to your problem, but I'm not saying that you've got a good time, because being with somebody that you call a narcissist probably sounds like hell.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Not a good word.
No.
So have you ever thought about getting into real estate law?
I have, and my wife opened up a title company about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And it wasn't our skill spot.
Okay.
We weren't really.
So it's not operating then.
We can do real estate litigation. We're very proficient at fighting disputes over real estate. We're very good at trusts and estate disputes. Yeah. So, let's say, for example, you have a family down in Naples and they need to figure out who owns who owns everything after mom and dad passed, and we have a dispute over the trust, we're very good at that. And we do it discreetly, so I can't really talk about how we do it.
Sure. How about going after commissions and things like that, or suing a seller or a buyer?
I can do that. It depends on the value of the commission, because at our hourly rate, you have to be very cognizant of, are the economics, does it make sense?
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. I always talk to every one of my clients, before you engage us, can you afford this, and does it make economic sense? Yeah. And I feel, Joe, like I turn away a lot more work than I should.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't want to have a disappointed client. You want to make sure that you actually truly help them versus just truly build them.
Yeah, make that first experience great.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the end result too.
And the big question is always, how much money is in escrow, right?
Right.
And how much is the commission? Because, hiring you for a job where the deposit's $5,000 or $10,000, it's not worth it.
But then you just do small claims court.
Yeah.
And never do business with those people again.
Yeah.
And I always say, whenever somebody comes into my office and asks me to draw up a contract, I say, you can do this, and I can certainly write up a good contract. And contracts are nice because you can lay out the expectations of people. But then again, if you're doing business with somebody that you can't trust, then what's the point? I settle cases worth millions of dollars based on my word with another attorney. And when the case is done, I say, okay, is this what we're going to pay? You're going to pay us? Yes. And, it's decent money.
Yeah.
But we trust each other because our word actually has meaning. And then we write up the release and the settlement agreement. But that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah. There's two attorneys that I know, both of them, and it's funny because they're fighting against each other.
Okay.
But then they're fishing together, and they're like really good friends, but they have a case against each other. That's got to be pretty common in that world.
Very common, and a lot of people get less so than it used to be, but people used to get very confused about that and think, well, why are you friends with my wife's attorney, or why are you friends with my husband's attorney? And it's because, well, we're professionals. We deal with each other on a daily basis, and you want me to be objective. You want me to look at your situation cleanly and clearly and figure out how to solve your problem and not have an emotional response to the attorney on the other side.
Yeah.
If we do that, then the attorneys will certainly make more money, but it's not going to help you as a client.
No, it's not. It's funny because you wonder if those two attorneys talk about the case at all,
we
right?
do.
But it kind of gets divided by law, right?
Correct.
That's what the separator is. Like, it's not me, it's not you, it's the law.
Correct. And so you can be friends with the attorneys, and you want your attorney talking with your spouse's attorney and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. We don't disclose private confidential things,
of course.
But in an effort to get the case settled, you certainly talk.
Like if me and you if I was an attorney and I'd say, man, I think you got me on this one, Steve.
And that's the honest way of doing it.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't say you got me as much as you just did. I'll a little less emphatic, and maybe see if I can get my client a little bit more money.
You'd probably say, Joe, I would probably say to you, hey, Steve, man, I got you on this one.
Yeah, but if that's truly
you're gonna
the
lose
case,
this case, buddy, just kind of letting you know.
Well, I've had people tell me that, and I still go forward and win.
Well, you have a great personality, though. You could smile that one off pretty easily.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer?
I don't know. I've always heard them one and the same.
Because I use them both, and I'm like, well, if I said attorney and you're a lawyer, or vice versa, will you be?
Well, what's the difference between a doctor and a physician? What's the difference between a real estate agent and a realtor?
Yeah.
It's just common vernacular.
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think there is a difference.
I don't think so. I was just curious, though. Good question.
I don't know.
So
we'll have to ask Dr. Google.
Let's talk about personal injury.
Okay.
Right? It's funny because I think of like a car accident, right? I mean, like a dermatologist in Florida or a personal injury, attorney in Florida kind of go hand in hand, right? The sun exposure does damage to your skin, and these crazy drivers down here cause damage to you and in your cars. I mean, there's got to be a lot of that going on.
I enjoy that practice of law. What I generally say, the way I try to break it down so you understand the value of personal injury attorneys and the American tort system, because I grew up in Southwest Florida, and everybody, when I was growing up, was saying, we need tort reform. There are too many lawyers. They're creating all these problems. And so that's how I grew up. Too many attorneys. I'm going to go to law school. But if you think about it from this perspective, there are rules and there are incentives. And so there are all types of rules telling people to drive safe, wear seatbelts, act right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are consequences. And so there's a policy issue with having attorneys that is for the public good. because if you drive unsafely and violate the rules, oh my gosh, you might get a slap on the wrist, you might get caught, there might be some penalty against you for driving unsafely. Or if I get you, there's going to be a financial penalty and I'm going to sue you and I'm going to take money from you. And having things taken away from people is a much bigger incentive on behavior, in my opinion, than rules. And so that's why the American legal system is so good, because we do have tort law, which does influence people to act safely. And it also compensates people when they get injured. So if some idiot runs into you in your car and destroys one of your beautiful vehicles, that person's going to pay for it. And since that person's going to get paid for it, you're going to be compensated for your loss, and also that person's behavior is going to be modified.
Yeah. It's amazing out there with the uninsured motorists and everything else. I can imagine how many cases you get where you can't do anything.
We would run television commercials, and I believe we still do, telling people, go buy your uninsured motorist coverage, because it's expensive, and a lot of people don't have bodily injury insurance or even enough to compensate you for the loss.
I know you're a Tesla guy because I see the big boy out there. You know, we got to shoot that thing with a bow and arrow and see if we can pierce through
you could try
the skin. It ain't gonna happen, I don't think.
Look, I've had electric cars now since 2020. My brother Toby, I think he had the first Model S from like 10 or 15 years ago that was delivered in the area, and we've loved them for the longest time.
So I got this, and I like that, by the way. I've never driven in the Cybertruck, but I want to take a ride.
It for a spin.
I want to take a ride. I got some of the marbles. I want to throw them at the window, see if I can do
That's not going to work.
Not after it broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, enhance the window. So I just got this Model Y.
Okay.
Performance, great. You know, I always wanted a Tesla. I don't have it anymore, but I wanted one, right?
Right.
White interior, looks like stormtroopers in the car with you. I thought it was kind of cool. So I'm driving this car. I had it for about a week. And all of a sudden I'm driving and I come to a stop and somebody just slams into the side of me. I'm like, damn, I just got this car.
That's the worst.
So, I kind of felt bad for the guy. He gets out. He was flustered. He's like, man, this is my favorite car. I hit my favorite car, man. I'm so sorry. What can I do with you? And he says, I think I can kind of pop this out. So I'm kind of standing there like this. I'm kind of looking at my car, shaking my head. And he's trying to yank on the fender, trying to pop. And I'm looking at the thing. I mean, it's
just
the
destroyed.
Whole quarter panel and everything else. So I said to him, do me a favor. I said, I'm not going to turn it in right now. I'm not going to call the cops on you, because the guy was having a bad day. Young guy. Felt bad for him. I wanted to kind of do a positive for him. So I said, I'm going to take you into a body shop. Let's go get a price.
Okay.
I'm going to get a price, and I'm going to have you pay them directly. And I'm not going to turn it in. He's like, man, thanks. So, bro, appreciate it. Thanks so much. You know where this is going, right?
Yeah.
With zero, I get
I've
zero.
seen this movie before.
Yeah. So I just felt bad. Never got a penny out of him. Tried calling him the whole 9 yards. I just kind of did him a positive, but I felt bad for him. But it cost about $2,000, which,
That's not that bad.
But yeah, sometimes you want to do the right thing.
Always do the right thing.
And then that's what happens.
But in that situation, the right thing is probably wait for somebody to come up and take a traffic crash report.
That's right, yeah. Have you ever had to fight your own case?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Car?
We had we had a homeowner's insurance claim for a house leak, which everybody else in town has had.
Yeah.
And our insurance company is now bankrupt and out of business. So they basically they denied our claim. We went through it for a number of years. I think they said something like, you can take this to trial. You guys are going to lose because you're attorneys and everybody hates attorneys. And we're like, well, you're probably right. But nevertheless, we've got a major loss and we can't afford to fix it. So we need you to pay. And ultimately, we got it resolved.
Did you?
Yeah. But it was 3 years of very extreme stress. We had to pay a mortgage and rent at the same time. Our insurance.
Oh, because you couldn't use the house at all.
Right. Yeah.
You have a 2-story home, right?
Then
so
and
leaked
now.
Upstairs.
Yeah.
It all went down.
Exactly.
What happened? Plumbing?
I forget. It's been a couple of years, and I forget also what our confidentiality rule was on that one.
Sure.
So it's been a bit.
Yeah. Turn the mics off for a second.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. But your house didn't get any water damage from the storm or nothing like that.
Well, we have a new house now.
Yeah.
And our new house was a 2009 build, and it's built like a tank.
Yeah.
So far we've been like unfortunately the last 3 hurricanes, our neighborhood's flooded, and you go outside and everybody else's house is flooded, and ours and our little subdivision's fine.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
So we've been very lucky.
Yeah, because I don't think it'd be good to rear end you in traffic. Next thing you know, you see
Usually armed.
Steve Martin, coming out of the car, man.
It's my father-in-law got not run over, but rear-ended. He rides his motorcycle around, and he was rear-ended by an attorney.
Wow.
Yeah. Who no longer is in town.
So take me back, growing up. You said you grew up here.
I grew up here.
Cape Coral?
Fort Myers.
Okay.
So my dad's medical practice was in Cape Coral. So he started Cape Coral Eye Center.
Oh, okay.
And which now my older brother, Toby, runs, and that's Tyson Eye.
Yeah.
So he took over the family business.
Nice.
But yeah, we grew up here in
That's
the 80s. Great. Daniels Road had 2 roads. It was Daniels Road, not Daniels Parkway.
Yeah.
All of that hospital was tomato fields to 6 Mile.
Isn't it amazing, like looking back? Don't you wish you would have just taken more pictures of things? It's the area, because there's nothing here.
Well, you're right. There's nothing here. None of us had cameras with us all the time. You're a weirdo if you had your Kodak disc camera or something.
That's right. Or my Polaroid.
Yeah.
At that time.
If you still have those, maybe they're there. A lot's changed. And, you grew up here. I grew up here. I enjoy having grown up here, and I really enjoy raising a family here.
Yeah.
When I graduated college, I started an internet company in college, and so we were acquired by another company, and they moved me up to Connecticut. So I got to live a year and a half in Connecticut, and then they moved me to Los Angeles, and so I got to live in Los Angeles for a number of years before law school.
Yeah.
So I got exposed to the big city and see what everything else is, and it's fantastic. But the interesting thing is, my friends who grew up in Los Angeles, actually a couple of my friends grew up in Pacific Palisades, and a lot of them don't live in Los Angeles. And so I get the sense a lot of people want to leave hometown.
They do.
And so even if you grow up in New York, even if you grow up in Los Angeles, some people just can't stand being at home. They feel like a loser if they go back home, even if back home is Beverly Hills.
They didn't make it, so they come back home, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in my situation, I don't know. I guess the jury's still out if you and I have made it. But, in my situation, I had a wife and a kid, and I had family resources here, so it just made sense to move to Fort Myers to open up my law practice here. And it's turned out to be phenomenally well for me because, I've got 4 kids, I think a very successful marriage, and a great life. I come home for lunch. I see my kids. I get to pick them up from school if I want. I can drop my kids off at school if I want. I can do whatever I want. I'm 2 hours away from Miami. I'm 2 hours away from New York City.
Yeah.
And when we go, and I'm sure you know how this is, when we go, we can have a lot of fun. But your friends that live in New York and your friends that live in Miami have a much different lifestyle than you.
Yeah, they do.
I couldn't afford to have 4 children in New York or LA or even Miami.
Sure. I know, it's crazy.
And if I could afford it, I would never see them. But now I've got a relationship with my children, and I feel like they're succeeding too. My oldest is at UF, and my next oldest is going to UF. I count that as a win.
That's success right there. A lot of times people ask what the meaning of success would be, right?
Right.
I don't think it's how much money you make, but having a good mix between, being able to afford, having, to be able to do things a little bit with your kids, but being able to see your kids and be able to have a good relationship with your wife and healthy. I mean, that's what it's all about right there.
100% I would say that's the only success.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have seen people that are dazzlingly wealthy, and of those people, I know some that are dazzlingly wealthy and are the best parents in the world.
Yeah.
And the best grandparents in the world. And so they have the best grandkids and the best kids in the world. I also know some people that just hate their life and they're financially successful, but they're just not doing so well.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because you look at these people and you're so talented. You could be doing so much more, but you're unhappy about something. And, there's something that's missing. So for me in my life, we've done well, but, I also know that there are plenty of attorneys that have done even better.
Yeah.
But I feel as successful as I need to be because the things that are important for me are doing well. My wife is happy. She actually smiles, when she sees me. I can still make her laugh where, maybe water is going to come out of her nose. My kids are happy. They're doing,
That's
I
great.
believe they're happy. I mean, maybe they get upset when we take their phones away. But, they're all succeeding academically and personally. And, that's all you need. Another car, who cares?
Yeah. That's what it's all about right there, man.
Although I would like an airplane. Somebody asked me, he's like, how much money do you need? And I was like, I don't know, but I need enough to get a jet that I could just fly whenever I need to. That would probably be all I would want. Or, just get my points on the, the net jets or something.
Yeah, exactly. Which is probably more expensive to have points with NetJets than it is to actually.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You can't, if you could write off NetJets, you probably could write off. You could. You could.
Yeah. But I'm not giving tax advice.
No.
Yeah. And I don't have NetJet points.
So we talked about growing up here. I didn't grow up here, by the way.
Well, you went to Estero High.
Yeah, but 89. I moved here in 89.
All right.
I'm from Chicago.
Yeah.
Chi-town warrior, you know. This was back in the day.
Where did you graduate from high school?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
So Estero High School, 93. But kind of growing up for me was different, right? You know, no technology, you know, watching movies and VHS tapes and the old wrestling guys. Remember the rubber wrestling guys?
Yeah, those are awesome.
The Hulk, the WWE toys and all that.
Yeah.
But all that stuff kind of growing up for me, that's kind of what we did, sports and stuff. So what was your childhood like? Were you into sports?
I played soccer, and so that was my sport.
Yeah.
And I played it in high school and middle school and elementary school, probably since I was a little kid. And I really enjoyed it. Other than that, we grew up off Daniels Road. Yeah. So it was a big house.
It's all dirt road, I remember.
It was a big house on 3 acres, and most of the people in the neighborhood, there weren't that many kids. So it was like me, my brothers.
So where at, off Daniels?
You know where Brynwood is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you looked at my folks' house at one point.
Yeah.
Somebody else bought it.
I sold some homes in there as well.
It's a weird neighborhood.
Because it's a big circle.
It's a big circle.
The Dre sites were right there.
Yeah.
Straight ahead.
Sure.
Remember them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first house then.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, right at the head of the circle. Yeah, that's cool. So 3 acres, playing soccer, playing sports. That must have been pretty fun in your yard.
I had no complaints.
Was your brother an athlete?
So my older brother, Toby, he was a kicker for Cypress Lake High.
Oh, he was?
And then he played college ball at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
So, yeah. So his game was football.
Nice.
Mine was soccer. My younger brother, David, played soccer as well.
Okay. Nice. And then through school, you played soccer in high school. And what school did you go to again? Fort Myers?
For me, it was Villas, Cypress, Dunbar, and then after Dunbar, my parents put me in private school, and I did Canterbury for high school.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
And then so in high school, right, they ask you the big question: what do you want to be when you grow up? Like you really know, you don't know. You're young, right?
I had no idea, and probably because I had enough ADHD, I couldn't focus on what I wanted to do. But I know what I really enjoyed, and what I did do is I loved music. And this is back when music was relevant in our lives.
Yeah.
And so I managed a friend's rock band. And then when I went to college at University of Florida, I got involved with the concert promoter at the school. And so we would book the bands that would come to play, like Dave Matthews Band, The Cure,
nice.
Like legit acts.
Bands, yeah.
Buju Banton, anybody that was awesome.
So you would book them at different venues,
school.
Right? Okay, nice.
And then after... concurrent to that, I also got a job with Sony Music, and I worked for a record company for close to 4 years in college, helping break acts in the college market that we had. So it's like Korn, System of a Down, Rage Against the Machine, Fiona Apple.
Good stuff,
good stuff.
That's good music. They don't make that stuff anymore right there. Korn was good.
Korn was awesome. And so those were our acts that we broke at Sony. Yeah. And so if you were going to ask...
When you say acts, so explain
acts
that.
Meaning the bands.
Yeah.
Band.
But I'm saying that you... So what were you doing with Sony then? So I don't know.
I was a college marketing representative. Yeah. So they would get signed to the label like Epic or Columbia or 550. Okay. Those were the labels that were under the Sony umbrella. And so a college marketing representative is to get this new band that you've never heard of and figure out how to help. We'd have plans, obviously, marketing plans and material, but the job was to promote these new bands to the college market. And I had all of North Florida. So we had to just make sure that college students would know who these people are, who these bands are. And usually you find the tastemakers or the people that really care about music and say, hey, listen, here's this new band. You should give them a listen. Who are they? Well, it's Rage Against the Machine. Let me listen to it. That sounds weird. I don't know if I like it. Because music's one of those weird things that, either it really resonates for you or you don't want to hear anything new. Like I told you before, I write music because I went and studied at Berkeley after COVID. Yeah. And when I have like my wife listen to my music, she's like, I hate music. I don't want to listen to this. Because some people have that reaction. But if you find people that truly care, it's awesome.
Yeah, to you, you're like, oh, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do you mean? Honey, what are you talking about?
Oasis? Let's listen to them. This is good stuff.
Limp Bizkit and Korn.
Ozzy Osbourne, Slayer, come on.
Korn, Limp Bizkit song.
Oh, they did
Korn
one?
and Limp Bizkit, they went together. Yeah, it's good jam.
Oh, I don't know that one. Well, they were Limp Bizkit was like the wannabe Corns.
Yeah.
But you know,
Korn was definitely System of a Down.
Yeah.
They were great.
They were one of our acts.
Yeah.
Incubus.
Oh, nice. They were good too.
Yeah. A buddy of mine out in Los Angeles, he was their day-to-day manager for
I like
a
them
long time.
So then after that, so tell me what you did after this.
So after that, then I started, well, during that, I learned how distribution and the actual media business worked to some extent.
Yeah.
And we had this thing coming out called the internet. And I really got fascinated with DVD technology and saw that, okay, well, there's this new medium coming out. People are going to start collecting movies like they collect books. Because remember, before DVDs, you would rent movies, but you never actually would buy movies because they were $100 for a tape.
Right.
I had Laserdiscs as a kid, but that was really niche.
Oh, yeah.
Like you had to be a nerd.
Yeah.
You know, and my dad bought Laserdiscs and he was a nerd and he had Laserdiscs, but most people did not. So when DVDs came out, for $20 you can buy a movie. I thought, okay, well, people are going to start collecting these things like books. There's a market. And at the time I knew how distribution worked and I figured out enough about how the internet worked where I was like, okay, I'm going to open up a DVD web store. So I opened up a DVD web store called Mega DVD. My second or third year in college, and sold DVDs online, and that paid for a lot of stuff. And then right before Amazon put us out of business, we got acquired by another internet company that ultimately started Myspace.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name on Myspace? Your first friend? Remember him?
I don't. So I was not at the company then, so I don't know any of those people. I know.
No, there was a guy, the Myspace guy.
Well, the whole and again, this was past my time at it was Intermix Media, so that was past my time at that company. But they had some brilliant people working there. I remember there's a guy, Adam Goldenberg, who was, I think, the CTO. The guy's a genius, a marketing whiz. I think he owns Fabletics right now.
Okay.
And then there was another guy, Eric Schiermeyer, who was our CTO, who was also a tech whiz and a genius. And I think he founded, after he helped found MySpace, he founded Zigna Games.
Okay.
Which, I don't know if you heard about that. I think he sold it for like $12 billion. So these are all really smart people. But I left the company before things really started popping because I wanted to go work in movies. And so when we were in Los Angeles, that's what I did.
How did the DVD thing, right? So how did you open up a company right online? People can rent them or buy them?
I sold them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Where'd you get them at?
A distributor.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got them for cheaper, sold them for more.
Yeah, it's
right
retail.
Yeah.
And it's essentially what Amazon does now at a much grander scale is you would just buy from your distributor and then resell them for people.
See, if you could have rented them online, you could have called it Netflix.
Steve Flicks. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is when Netflix came out, that was such a wild idea. And I think Netflix was a year after I started Mega DVD. And it was, those guys were geniuses.
Or you could have put it at convenience stores and you could have called it Redbox.
Yeah, right? Netflix I think is a better gig though.
Yeah, it was.
They're doing
definitely.
Better.
Yeah, you can get them online. That's insane.
Yeah.
So obviously, growing up, you did that. Then the next step was after that, after DVDs.
After DVDs, it was Intermix or eUniverse, the MySpace company.
Yeah.
Again, I was long gone after they started MySpace.
Yeah.
So then they moved me to Los Angeles to help out with just growing the company. And, my mind was somewhere else. I wanted to try movies.
Yeah.
And so I left them and I started working for a company started by a guy named Michael Ovitz, who at the time, and I still think but at the time was, he created Creative Artists Agency, which was one of the best talent agencies in the world. And so they had a manager training program at his newer company, which was called Artist Management Group. He started that after he was president of Disney.
Okay.
And so I worked there for about a year and a half in their training program to learn how to be a talent manager. And I wanted to do it in motion picture lit. But my ADHD got the better of me and I was a terrible assistant. And I think I was the only assistant in the training program to ever have been fired, because normally they get you to quit or work you out. But I was so awful, I got fired.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You got fired on your day off?
No.
That's a movie.
I can't
that's
imagine.
A movie quote, Steve, Friday, the movie Friday.
Oh yeah. Well, it wasn't that situation, but I was just awful at the job. So I did that for a bit. And then a friend of mine was kind enough to let me intern at Warner Brothers for about 6 months or so before I would go to law school. And then I went to law school and then started, this new career.
Yeah. So as a talent scout, do you have any talent come in there? Any big names?
Well, our clients
Before they became
were the best in the world. So we had Leo DiCaprio, Marty Scorsese, Cameron Diaz, directors John McTiernan, Dennis Hopper. They put together a lot of the talent for Lord of the Rings. So who played Legolas in Lord of the Rings?
Oh.
Natalie Portman for Star Wars. And now I think I'm getting old, man, where I need my iPhone to tell me who all these people are. Orlando Bloom.
Okay, that's
so
right.
Orlando was one of the actors that they had identified as a talent, and the guy's clearly a genius as an actor, but you also need people behind him. And so his managers were able to structure and direct his career so he could be the person that he is now. Adrian Brody, same situation. I think it was either a manager named Aline Kashishian or Joanne Colonna, both who are brilliant at what they did. And I would say they helped create his career as what it is today. Samuel Jackson.
Did you get a chance to meet a lot of these people?
Yeah, of course.
Did you meet Samuel Jackson?
I talked to him on the phone a lot.
Did you?
Yeah, big golfer. Very nice person too. Yeah.
How about some of the other ones? How about DiCaprio? Was he cool?
DiCaprio, the only DiCaprio story I can think of is one of my friends barreled over him at the elevator when DiCaprio broke his leg, and there was a big scare, like, oh my God, did we just break Leo's leg again? Yeah.
That's great.
So not much interface with me and him. Yeah. Sadly.
Word
is a very nice person, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Some great actors and actresses there.
Oh yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson, man, best movie he made.
Which is
Pulp Fiction.
I would say, yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Up there.
It's hard to pick because he has so many of them.
He did.
And the impression I got in the limited time I had there was that, he truly wanted to work. He's like an actor's actor, where it's, I think his career really broke when he was in his late 30s or 40s. And so he had that hunger of, it's like John Hamm, who was 10 or 20 years of the LA grind before he actually hit as an actor. And then you're like, okay, this can end at any point.
You and your wife meet after this.
Yeah.
In law school?
We met at law school.
She couldn't.
She chased me around the law school all the time.
She couldn't,
Yeah. I mean,
had to chase you around.
Is
you didn't
me
want to be
over
with her.
100 other potential male lawyers, and so she picked me.
I figured she was chasing you so long, you didn't want to.
She ground me down, and I finally was like, okay.
Yeah, and then you just had to finally say, okay, all right, honey.
But we got married in law school, and we had our first daughter in law school. She was, so we were that weird couple that everybody's like, okay, these two are going to be like an embarrassing losers for the entire school.
That's great.
But we made it work.
Yeah, that was my joke with my wife. I always say she chased me for so long, I just finally said, all right.
Yeah.
I'll date you.
But I thought that's what happened.
Yeah, well, not really. It's kind of the other way around. So obviously with two attorneys in business, lawyers, attorneys, kids, is it hard though with your wife in the business, like a dinner table? Hey, honey, we won the case. I mean, what's it like?
There's no separation. So we are always talking about work. All the time. I get up at 5. I'm checking my emails at 5. She gets up a little bit afterwards. I'm sure she's checking her emails too. Yeah. We do have different practices. So I go to court and I do litigation. She does not like going to court, so she's more of the sit-down lawyer. Yeah. So I am more adept at handling conflict and fights than she is. Yeah. So that's something that she doesn't particularly enjoy. Whereas for me, it's just Tuesday. But how do we relate to each other? I think fine.
That's good.
It's normal.
People always ask because they don't know. They say, Joe, so your wife, does she work with you? My wife's like, no, not a chance. I think Joe, she always says, I think Joe would be tough to work for. I don't know if I want to work with him.
I don't know anything other.
Yeah.
Because we've been doing it for 20 years. And I think doing it well and at a high level.
Jen does skin.
Right.
And I do, sales. So it's funny because at night we don't really talk about work.
I don't know how that would work for me because, my wife is, my best friend.
Yeah.
And so we talk about everything. And I think we wouldn't be able to relate to each other if we didn't have the same profession.
Yeah.
But I think for other people, they couldn't imagine working with their spouse. So it's like I say, every relationship's its own special thing.
Exactly. What are some failures, struggles through life? Some of the sort of the dark side of what you do.
Well, lately, I think, for the past 20 years, I don't believe there have been that many failures. It's been a phenomenal run.
Yeah.
Prior to that, well, I just told you, I failed miserably in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever been fired from a job before, and I got fired from being an assistant.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I was awful at it.
That's a good lesson, though.
But I know what I'm good at. I had a good friend of mine, and I'm going to show her this podcast. And when I say good friend, it's somebody I haven't spoken to in the longest time, but the impact she's had on my life has been substantial. And this was when I was working at Warner Brothers,
Okay.
As a temporary basis. And it was in the executive part of the studio where you actually pick which movies get made and staff the writers and the actors, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things she told me, she said, Steven, after I've been there for maybe a month or so, she's like, nobody likes you here. I'm like, why? And she's like, because you don't talk to anybody. You have like a dry face on. You don't smile to anybody.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks you're an asshole. And you kind of look like Draco Malfoy, because at the time I did. And I wonder if they cast him. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so she pointed that out. And I said, the reason I don't talk to everybody here is because everybody here is so amazing and impressive. The head of the studio is right down the hall. This vice president of production, is an incredible person. Yeah. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to I'm just like, holy shit. I don't want anybody to know that I'm here. I just want to be like quiet Steve and answer phones. And she's like, no. But the problem is you think you're being shy and respectful, but everybody else is reading it completely wrong. You need to get out of your head and figure out a way to be much more engaging and smiling. And that was probably one of the more impactful lessons in my life. And I've carried it with me these past 20 years. Sure. And I think my success in life is largely drawn to that lesson that was given to me.
Yeah, that's great.
So what I learned from her, what I learned from her was that I need to think about things from other people's perspectives. So since then, at that time, and literally the next day, I went to the studio and I would try to be more smiley, talk to people, more engaging, and less standoffish. And I think it was too late to change the impression of me at the studio then. But I took that lesson to me with law. And you say, well, Steven, you're an engaging person, et cetera, et cetera. Well, part of that is the result of that lesson learned, which is to, try to talk to people, try to, maybe somebody doesn't know what the hell's going on in your head, and try to be a little bit more engaging with them and be more friendly and open.
Chapter in the book.
Huge lesson.
Shout out to Kimmy.
Yeah. She's going to listen to this. She's like, I hate you for saying that name. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to talk to her in years.
Well, now you can just forward her the link.
I will.
Let her know.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. We got 3 minutes. Okay.
You need to change film or we're done?
No.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. We're at an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. Jesus.
All right. Really quick, I got a few more things. So, can I get 5 minutes?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll speak fast. You need to get the Joe Rogan disc size.
Yeah, no shit.
Well, no, it's not that. I have an appointment.
Oh, okay.
All right. Let's just go through a couple things. All right. We'll just pop through them, okay?
Right.
So AI, has it changed, positively affected you negatively? Let's go back. Fuck that. AI, has it changed, the way you do business? Positive or negative?
I don't think it's changed the way I've done business yet, but I'm seeing how the platforms are starting to work, and I've actually used it on certain things. And I think it has great potential. And I think where it's going to work out best is it's going to make it so legal services are cheaper for regular people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what you could spit out, right? Give me the top 5 ways to, it's just
Well, I'll give a legal argument. For example, I think once I uploaded a motion that I was struggling with, I was like, there's something missing here. What's wrong? And then I gave it to AI, and then the AI is like, well, here, this is an additional sentence you should add.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the point I was trying to make, but I was just grasping for the words.
I love it. Just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Probably negative. I would say if I could not have all the AI, it'd probably be better.
How come?
I don't know. I don't know. It's just I think it's too easy. I think it doesn't allow your brain to kind of think about ways to structure things, way to write things down. I don't know.
Think of it this
Maybe
way.
I'm just old school guy trying not for,
You might be. We used to walk
technology.
places, and then we got horses. And then after we got horses, then we had wagons. And now we have cars. And now we have jet engines. So think about it like the way you used to think about things is walking. AI will bring it to you using airplanes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I watched iRobot too many times. You know, I just
Probably.
get scared of technology.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Kids, mindset, right? Like, do you ever have that dad guilt? Like, you know, you just don't do enough. You got 4. You got to spread your love amongst all 4 and just always
No.
be there. Good.
But I always try. I could always spend more time with my kids, and they may probably not want me to spend more time with my kids. But from the jump, I would take my 2 oldest ones as much as possible to say Disney World or Universal, and we would just do the daddy-daughter trips.
Good.
You know, we would just get away, let mom chill, you know, decompress her brain.
Yeah.
And I'd take my daughters to baseball games. We used to have season tickets to the Bucks, so we'd haul up there for the game. So I try to spend time with them at golf. I golf with the girls as much as possible. I probably could spend more time, and it's sad that my oldest ones are gone.
I know.
You know,
it really
sucks.
is. I feel like we always sort of judge ourselves based on how much we do. I spend more time with him because I'm Jake's coach.
Right.
Then I miss Joey's game, but then Jules, I got to get to her volleyball game. You know, you always feel like you want to just be everywhere at all times.
I think with 4, we don't have the same level of guilt because we're just trying to keep our feet on the ground.
Yeah. But those trips and things you could do together as a family really kind of, make everything
The trips are everything.
perfect, right?
We took them to Italy for Thanksgiving, and that was awesome. We took the 2 older ones to Korea this past June. So we really try to travel with our children as much as possible. My wife wanted to get some, fancy sports car.
Yeah.
And then we were looking at the numbers, and we're like, you know what? That's a lot of trips with the kids. And so we're going to take the trips with the kids.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. It's almost like a client told me one time, he says, Joe, I focused on the money. But then he says, I grew old. I got all this money. My kids are all grown up. And he goes, if I could do it all over again, I would have done it the other way.
That's the best thing
Focus on
about
your
my
kids.
job is I talk to people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s or 90s that have all the money in the world, but not the time.
That's right.
And you can't get
Can't
that
take it
time
back.
back.
You can't take it back.
And also being rich in 80 and unable to travel, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I'd rather be broke in 80.
Yeah, true.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's right. Steve, I got to tell you, man, it's been a real pleasure working today with you, man. I'm glad we
Awesome.
pulled you out of work. Now I'm going to have your wife come in here and get the
You
other
should.
side of things, just to fact check. I want to
I
fact
think
check
she's a much more interesting
everything
person
else.
than me.
So what are some things you can give to the viewers, the listeners, kind of words from the wise?
Ooh, I mean, trying to get me to think of anything wise to say. Let's go back to what you were talking about earlier, about travel, time, and money. I really believe that's the lesson that I've learned from my clients. And think about it. I've talked to thousands of people. So that's thousands of people's lifetime wisdom that I've had an opportunity to absorb. And you were talking about traveling. I think travel with family is one of those things that for me is the best return on investment that you can ever have.
Yeah.
I had a doctor once tell me, Stephen, it's great to buy a new car for a week. Then it's your car. And it's not as sexy and as
That's right.
exciting. What does my wife say? Don't marry your mistress. I don't know if that's a piece of wisdom or not, but I think it aligns with what the doctor was saying. You know, some things you don't buy because it's not as much fun as you would expect.
That's right.
So travel with family, spend your money if you have it on time with your family and the people that you love.
Yeah.
Those core memories are never going away. And if I'm broken when I'm 80, hopefully I have 4 kids. One of them will let me live with them.
That's right. Cabana suite.
Absolutely.
I can say a courtyard home if we need to.
There we go.
It's amazing when you're younger, these vacations are so stressful, right? Because you got so much to do when you're in your 30s. But then you get in your 40s and you go, man, I'm going to enjoy every second of this vacation.
Yeah.
So you just get better as time. See, we're wise old men now.
I think
Well,
so.
I am. You're
You
still
got more
young.
gray hair
Yes,
than me.
I do. But Stephen, tell the audience, the viewers, how they can find you.
So my law firm, you can find us online at martinlawfirm.com. We have an office in Cape Coral, Naples, a satellite in Fort Myers, and we do consumer law for anything that you may need your help with.
I got to say, the final thoughts of today, man, it's life. It's kids, it's family. It's trying to put those things in order. As you're younger, you want the money. You want to just make money, right? Then you kind of get to a point where you can just kind of get ahead a little bit, and then you have kids.
How long have you been married?
17 years.
Okay.
And you kind of have kids, and then you start realizing the importance of just having just time, right? Just trying to slow down time. The easiest way to slow down time is a real simple answer. You got to get up earlier. You know, have longer days like me and you.
I get up at 5. I'm not getting up any earlier.
5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
So you get up at 5?
I do. So if I have questions, I'm gonna text you early.
If you're not texting me at 5:15, I'm gonna say you're not really up at 5 o'clock.
I'll be in the gym, man. I'll be in the gym. But you know, it's all about family. It's all about, you know, just being together and just creating something, man. Working hard, setting examples for your kids. And
that and good wine. We're not here to talk about wine today. Right. Next time I'll tell you all about wine.
All right. And they could follow our footsteps. Maybe your kids become attorneys, and maybe my kids become big famous podcasters, or you know.
What do you think's the future after podcasts? Because there's always something next.
I don't know. There's a couple of things brewing. We'll talk about that later.
All right. Hope
you enjoyed the show. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, social media. Check out the joepavichpodcast.com. If you want to become a sponsor, let me know. And I hope you enjoy the show.